What if two of the greatest visionaries in human history, Edgar Cayce, the healer who could peer deep into the souls of people, and Nostradamus, the seer who glimpsed centuries ahead, were brought together in one room? Imagine them seated quietly, observing not the stars or humanity itself, but one simple cat. In this moment of silence, would they see merely an ordinary animal, or something far greater? Perhaps a soul carrying ancient wisdom from times long forgotten. Cats have always been an enigma. Throughout history, they've wandered silently between worlds, companions to pharaohs, witches, prophets, and kings. They've been adored, feared, worshipped, and trusted. But do we truly know them? By the end of this video, your understanding of cats will shift dramatically. They will no longer be mere pets lounging by your window. Instead, you'll recognize them as spiritual companions, keepers of reincarnation secrets, messengers of prophecy. Stay with me, because Edgar Cayce and Nostradamus are about to unveil a hidden truth, one that just might change the way you see your feline friend forever. Ready to embark on this journey? Let's begin. Before we dive deeper, if you've ever felt a mysterious bond with a cat or sensed something more profound behind their quiet stare, please share your story below. I'd love to hear your experiences. Now, let's travel back to a time of profound mystery, where the future danced subtly behind the veil of words. Michel de Nostradamus, better known as Nostradamus, was no ordinary man. Born in 1503, this famed French astrologer and physician would become one of the most enigmatic prophets in human history. Nostradamus lived in an age of turbulence and plague, yet amid chaos, he quietly wrote cryptic verses known as quatrains, which, centuries later, still captivate minds searching for clues about the future. What's often overlooked, however, is Nostradamus's unique bond with animals, particularly cats. While his quatrains are famously shrouded in metaphor and symbolism, there are compelling indications he saw animals as something far more significant than ordinary beings. Nostradamus's vision of the future wasn't solely human-centric. He saw animals as integral participants in humanity's destiny. Take Quatrain 674, for instance, where Nostradamus cryptically states, "When the great cat across the water does leap, humanity trembles. Worlds awaken from sleep." On first glance, this verse may seem vague, perhaps just symbolic imagery. But consider this throughout history. Cats have often symbolized intuition, hidden truths, and transitions between realms of consciousness. Nostradamus carefully chose each word, fully aware his prophecies would span centuries. Could the great cat be an allegory not just for a physical event, but also for humanity's intuitive awakening, guided by a spiritual animal messenger? But why a cat? Nostradamus was deeply influenced by cultures and traditions that revered feline creatures. In ancient Egypt, cats were worshipped, their souls believed to guard sacred truths about the afterlife. Nostradamus, known for drawing on diverse spiritual traditions, likely saw in cats what Egyptians saw: creatures that navigated effortlessly between the physical world and the spiritual realm. Another quatrain, 244, seems almost intentionally obscured behind feline symbolism. "Through feline gaze, truth shall quietly flow, the silent guardian, secrets yet to bestow." Again, Nostradamus emphasizes a cat's gaze. Why would the prophet give prominence to something as subtle as the look in a cat's eyes? Perhaps Nostradamus wasn't merely speaking metaphorically. Perhaps he recognized what modern spiritual traditions have only recently rediscovered: that animals especially cats, often perceive and reflect energies unseen by human eyes. Cats today are known to sense impending natural disasters, emotional upheavals, and even unseen entities. What if Nostradamus was aware of this uncanny feline ability centuries before modern researchers started acknowledging it? Could his cryptic verses about cats have concealed deeper truths and warnings about humanity's spiritual direction and intuition? Moreover, Nostradamus frequently utilized animals as symbols for critical events: dogs, eagles, lions. But the cat's unique and repeated appearance suggests something more personal and profound. Did Nostradamus himself find spiritual inspiration through feline companionship? Did he see cats as divine messengers, entrusted with warnings humanity needed desperately to hear, but often ignored? Reflecting carefully on his verses, one can't help but wonder, did Nostradamus intentionally hide his most urgent messages behind the mysterious gaze of cats? Was he quietly urging future generations like ours to observe these gentle animals closely, to learn from their subtle wisdom and reconnect with a profound intuition we humans seem to have lost? As we continue to unravel the secrets of Nostradamus, we're left with an intriguing question that Edgar Cayce might help us answer. Could the enigmatic feline gaze indeed hold the key to understanding ourselves and perhaps our future? Stay tuned, because next we'll dive even deeper, exploring Edgar Cayce's astonishing revelations about animal souls and their roles as our spiritual guardians. If you're still here with me right now, thank you. It means a lot that you're choosing to stay curious, to go deeper, and to explore questions that don't always have easy answers. You're not just watching, you're wondering. And that changes everything. Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, wasn't a fortune teller in the traditional sense. He didn't gaze into a crystal ball or write cryptic verses. Instead, he entered deep trance states, sleep-like journeys, during which he offered medical diagnoses, spiritual insights, and guidance on reincarnation, the soul, and the invisible forces that shape our lives. But what's often overlooked is how deeply Cayce spoke about animals, not just as companions, but as spiritual beings with purpose, memory, and even karmic connection to the humans they lived with. Cayce believed that animals, especially those closely bonded with humans, often return to us across lifetimes. In one documented reading, a woman asked Cayce about the soul of her recently deceased dog. His response was simple, yet powerful. The soul of the animal returns to continue its purpose with thee. In another case, he explained that a cat had been with its owner in a previous life, suggesting that animals don't just love us, they choose us again and again. To Cayce, pets weren't random additions to our lives. They were, in many cases, assigned. Souls that chose to reincarnate in animal form for the purpose of offering comfort, protection, or companionship, especially when human hearts were too broken to receive love from another person. A cat, curling up next to you in silence, might not just be seeking warmth. It could be guarding your energy, soothing unseen wounds, or simply reminding you that you are not alone. Cayce also viewed cats as intuitive empaths. He believed that their silence wasn't absence, it was attention. Their behavior was not erratic, but deliberate. When a cat stares at a corner of the room or watches you sleep, Cayce saw it not as superstition, but as spiritual observation. Cats, in his vision, were tuned in to forces humans had long forgotten how to sense. There's a beautiful story about a young boy who was deeply afraid of dying. His family consulted Cayce for guidance. During the reading, Cayce mentioned the boy's cat not as a comfort item, but as a soul with healing energy that had chosen to walk with him during his most vulnerable time. Cayce called it a gentle soul that has known this child before and walks beside him once more. Let that sink in. Your cat, your dog. They might not just be animals who live with you. They might be souls who've walked with you through grief, through illness, through silent nights of uncertainty. They might be witnesses to your transformation, caretakers of your spirit, and keepers of ancient memory. Cayce's approach was radically different from Nostradamus' symbolic and poetic style. Where Nostradamus warned through mystery, Cayce healed through intimacy. Where Nostradamus spoke of what may come, Cayce focused on what still hurts and how the soul, whether human or feline, can help us return to wholeness. And just when you think Cayce had it all figured out, there's one lingering question he never fully resolved. What happens when an animal dies? Does their soul reincarnate immediately? Or wait until we need them again? He hinted at the answer, but never fully gave it. Maybe because it's not meant to be known but felt. So, I invite you to sit with this. If your cat isn't just a pet, what is it? If it chose you, why? And if Cayce was right, what has it already healed in you silently, without ever asking for recognition? We're just getting started. In the next part, we'll explore how ancient cultures viewed cats not just as symbols, but as sacred messengers. And we'll begin to understand why both Cayce and Nostradamus, in their own mysterious ways, found something divine in the quiet presence of a feline soul. Stay with me. The next revelation might just unlock a truth you felt all along, but never had words for. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we've always known there's more to cats than meets the eye. After all, humans have been watching them, revering them, and fearing them for thousands of years, not just in homes, but in temples, tombs, and sacred texts. Long before we ever had a word for pet, cats were already walking through our mythologies. Across continents and civilizations, they were never just animals. They were signs. They were messengers. They were something between. Let's start in ancient Egypt, perhaps the most cat-revering culture of all. To the Egyptians, cats were more than companions. They were spiritual guardians. Bastet, the cat-headed goddess, wasn't some decorative figure. She was a protector of the home, a fierce guardian of women and children, and a bridge between the mortal and the divine. Cats were so deeply respected that killing one even by accident was punishable by death. That wasn't law. That was reverence. But why such devotion to a creature that rarely obeys, rarely performs, and rarely explains itself? The Egyptians believed cats could see the unseen. They didn't just hunt rodents, they watched spirits. They sensed shifts in energy. Their silent movements weren't stealth, they were sacred. A cat staring into a corner of the room wasn't being odd. It was acknowledging something we had forgotten how to notice. And Egypt wasn't alone. In Japanese folklore, the Bakaneko and Nekomata were supernatural cats with shape-shifting abilities, sometimes benevolent, sometimes vengeful, but always powerful. Even today, the Maneki Neko, the little beckoning cat figurine with one paw raised, sits in shops across Asia to invite prosperity and protection. It's not a gimmick. It's a whisper of older beliefs, still lingering. In Norse mythology, the goddess Freya rode a chariot pulled by two giant cats. These were no ordinary beasts, they were symbols of fertility, feminine strength, and deep magic. In Hindu stories, cats are often associated with maternal care, patience, and karma. In Islam, cats are cherished as clean, spiritual animals. Even Muhammad is said to have cut off a piece of his robe rather than disturb his sleeping cat. Do you notice the pattern? Wherever humans sought to explain the unexplainable, cats were nearby, watching, waiting, teaching us, without words, how to be still, how to notice, how to feel. They were in the corners of sacred halls, on the laps of queens, at the feet of poets, and maybe beside you right now, quiet, but fully aware. Now, here's something you might not expect. In several shamanic traditions, especially among Siberian and Central Asian peoples, cats were seen as spiritual travelers. They believed cats could leave their bodies during sleep and wander between realms. Dreamwalkers, energy shifters, soul messengers. Sound familiar? If Edgar Cayce believed that a cat could reincarnate to walk beside us, and if Nostradamus hinted at feline symbols within his prophecies, maybe they weren't predicting anything new at all. Maybe they were remembering something ancient, something humanity once understood deeply, that cats are not just animals, but spiritual entities in fur and flesh. So when your cat stares through you, or into the dark, or seems to know what's wrong before you speak a word, consider that it may not be instinct. It may be memory, old memory, soul memory, the kind of knowing that predates language. And maybe, just maybe, that's why every culture, even if they never met each other, reached the same conclusion. Cats aren't just in this world. They walk between. So let's keep going, because next, we'll bring Nostradamus and Cayce face to face. Their lives never crossed, but their visions might have. And the thread tying them together, it's soft, it purrs, and it might be curled up at your feet right now. If this journey is stirring something in you, a memory, a feeling, a deeper question, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment, share your story, or just say hi. Sometimes the most meaningful awakenings begin with a quiet conversation. It's easy to look at Edgar Cayce and Nostradamus as opposites. Cayce, the gentle healer, Nostradamus, the cryptic prophet. One spoke with softness and light, the other with shadow and symbols. But peel back the layers, and you'll discover something extraordinary. Despite the centuries that separated them, and the vastly different ways they saw the world, these two men shared a profound and perhaps overlooked truth. Animals are not beneath us, they're beside us, and often beyond us. Both Cayce and Nostradamus spoke of animals not as biological organisms, but as spiritual participants. They didn't merely describe behavior, they implied presence, sentience, and in many ways, soul. Cayce believed that animals, especially those we bonded with, had karmic relationships with humans, that they could reincarnate to walk beside us again, that their presence in our lives wasn't random, it was remembered. Nostradamus, though less direct, pointed again and again to animals, especially cats, as prophetic carriers. They were his metaphors, yes, but they were also mirrors, symbols that revealed what words couldn't say directly. Both men understood something we still wrestle with. Animals are empaths. They feel what we suppress. They reflect what we hide. And they often know before we do when something is coming, when something is wrong, or when the spirit shifts in the room. Neither man dismissed this. They leaned into it. Cayce, in his trances, often described energy fields that animals were sensitive to. He spoke of the aura, not just of humans, but of spaces, and how animals gravitated toward harmony. Nostradamus, with his coded language, offered us cats as clues, appearing at pivotal turns in prophecy, not barking, not demanding, just appearing, watching, waiting. Both men held a kind of reverence for the unseen. They trusted intuition over intellect, dreams over data, silence over noise. And within that silence, both seemed to agree on one thing: animals, especially cats, hold keys to spiritual truth we've forgotten how to find. What's more, both Cayce and Nostradamus believed that what is hidden is often the most important. Cayce entered trance to receive what he could not consciously access. Nostradamus buried his insights in riddles to protect what he feared would be misused. And in their own ways, they both hinted that animals, particularly those closest to us, could be the purest vessels of these messages. Think about it. When a cat enters your life, it doesn't ask for explanation. It simply is. It chooses a spot, claims a space, and then stays watching, listening, sensing. Isn't that what both Cayce and Nostradamus did? In their own way. So here's something worth asking. If two of the greatest spiritual minds in history both pointed toward animals quietly, consistently, symbolically, why don't we listen more closely? And here's another. Could your cat, your dog, be more than a companion? Could they be a thread in your soul's own pattern? A mirror of something deeper you're meant to rediscover? In the next part, we'll explore the differences, because while these two visionaries shared a foundation, the paths they walked beyond that point couldn't be more different. Stay with me. The divergence is where it gets fascinating. It's fascinating, isn't it? How two men separated by centuries could still see through such similar lenses. And yet, as we look closer, we start to notice the cracks. Not in their vision, but in how they chose to see. Because while Cayce and Nostradamus might have agreed on the mystery of animals, they walked two very different paths through it. There's something deeply human about trying to make sense of the unknown. Some of us reach for comfort, others search for control. And that's exactly where Cayce and Nostradamus begin to part ways. Edgar Cayce saw animals, especially cats and dogs, as gentle guardians, souls that had chosen to return in fur and bone, not for their own growth, but for ours, to comfort us, to mirror our emotional wounds, to heal. In Cayce's world, these animals didn't just happen into our lives. They arrived when we needed them most. They found us in grief, in silence, in transition. And often, they stayed long enough to help us feel whole again. Cayce didn't use animals to predict. He used them to reconnect. He believed that their presence was sacred and their intuition a reflection of divine intelligence. To him, the cat sleeping at your feet was a soul fulfilling a promise, a cosmic vow carried through time. But Nostradamus, he looked at animals through a different lens entirely. To Nostradamus, animals were signs, omens, symbols coded into the unfolding timeline of human destiny. He placed them in verses like chess pieces, strategic, deliberate, precise. When a cat appeared in his prophecies, it wasn't for comfort. It was a warning, a signal, a mirror not of your emotions, but of the world's unraveling. Where Cayce whispered healing, Nostradamus sounded alarms. One soothed the soul, the other shook it awake. Even their relationships to time were different. Cayce traveled inward to past lives, present wounds, eternal truths. Nostradamus looked forward to wars, revolutions, pandemics, collapse. One looked within to help you feel. The other looked ahead to help you prepare. And yet, strangely, both reached for the same animal. The cat. For Cayce, the cat was a familiar spirit, intuitive, devoted, soft around the edges but sharp when needed. For Nostradamus, it was the watchman slipping through dreams, standing guard at the doorway of tomorrow. It's like watching the same movie through two different lenses. One filters the light, the other sharpens the contrast. And perhaps neither is wrong, they're simply different kinds of seeing. So here's the real question. Which vision speaks to you more deeply? Do you lean toward the quiet healing of Cayce, or the cryptic foresight of Nostradamus? Or maybe you're learning to walk the space between them. Because here's the thing, our world doesn't need just healers. And it doesn't need just prophets. It needs people who can hold both, who can see the future with clarity and still bring compassion into the present. Maybe that's why cats come to us the way they do, silently, steadily, mysteriously. They don't demand we choose between logic and magic, prophecy or presence. They simply sit in our lives and let us decide what they mean. And perhaps that's the most spiritual act of all. Coming up next, we'll step even further into this space between, because while their differences are clear, it's what Cayce and Nostradamus left unsaid that might hold the deepest truth of all. Keep watching. What you'll hear next could change the way you see every quiet soul that's ever curled up beside you. There's a reason cats keep appearing again and again, not just in stories, myths, or prophecies, but in our lives. They don't follow us like dogs. They don't perform for our approval. They arrive quietly, stay on their own terms, and seem to know more than they let on. In that stillness, something ancient speaks. Cats have always represented a kind of paradox. They're independent, yet deeply intuitive, distant, yet comforting. They don't chase affection, yet somehow provide more emotional presence than most people we know. They hold space without trying. And maybe that's exactly what makes them the perfect symbol for everything both Cayce and Nostradamus were pointing toward. For Cayce, cats embodied healing. Not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. Their presence wasn't decoration, it was medicine. A sleeping cat on your bed wasn't just resting, it was recalibrating your energy, guarding your grief, anchoring your spirit. Cayce taught that animals, especially those with us in times of transition, served as protectors of the soul's evolution. They knew how to sit in silence with the wounded parts of us, without judgment, without pressure, just presence. And for Nostradamus, the cat was a signal, a metaphor for what lingers just beyond our understanding. In his visions, animals often marked shifts, moments when history tilted, when unseen forces broke the surface. Cats, especially, emerged in his writings when something powerful was approaching. Not loudly, not with chaos, but like a shadow sliding across a wall, soft, sudden, undeniable. It's no coincidence that both men, from such different worlds, centered on the same creature, because the cat sits at the crossroads of all things human and beyond. In one form, it is a companion. In another, a prophet. It walks through your living room like it owns the place. And maybe it does. Not in ego, but in awareness. A cat doesn't need your permission to exist. It simply is. And in that unapologetic presence lies a truth many of us have forgotten, that we too can exist without explanation. That we don't have to perform to be meaningful. That we can trust what we feel, even when it's invisible. Especially when it's invisible. Maybe that's why cats stir something deep in us. Because they remind us of what we've lost. They are living metaphors for intuition, boundaries, mystery, and inner power. They don't explain themselves. They don't need to. And neither should we. So the next time your cat stares off into nothing, maybe it's not nothing at all. Maybe it sees something someone you've forgotten to notice. A part of you that's still healing, or remembering, or simply waiting to be acknowledged. And when you catch its eyes, just for a second, and feel that flicker, that chill, that pause, that quiet recognition, you might not be imagining it. You might be looking into the eyes of a soul that knows exactly who you are and why you're still here. We're almost there. In the final part, we'll ask the question that's been waiting since the beginning: who really understood the soul of the cat Cayce? Nostradamus? Or maybe, just maybe, you. So now, after all the stories, the symbols, the prophecies, and the whispers between worlds after Cayce's healing visions and Nostradamus's mysterious warnings, we come to the real question: who really understood the soul of the cat? Was it Cayce, who believed animals returned to us not by chance, but by design? Spiritual companions meant to heal, to witness, to walk beside us in silence? Or was it Nostradamus, who saw in their presence a deeper message, omens of what is to come, quiet signals from the threads of fate unraveling beneath the surface? Both men saw the cat as more than just a pet. Both recognized something sacred in its presence. But maybe the soul of a cat can't be fully understood through visions or prophecy. Maybe it was never meant to be explained but experienced. Because the cat isn't asking to be solved, it's asking to be seen, and maybe that's the point. The true understanding of a cat's soul isn't found in any book or quatrain or reading, it's found in you. In the way you pause to listen, in the chill you felt when their eyes met yours in the dark, in the way they show up when you're hurting and somehow know exactly where to sit. The soul of a cat doesn't speak in words. It speaks in energy, in intuition, in presence. And only those who are still enough, quiet enough, awake enough will hear it. So, who really understands the soul of cats? Not just Cayce, not just Nostradamus, but you, if you're willing to trust what can't be seen. If this journey stirred something inside you, a memory, a feeling, a question, I invite you to share it in the comments. Maybe your story will awaken something in someone else. Maybe your experience is exactly what another soul needs to hear tonight. And if you'd like to explore more mysteries like this, if you feel at home in spaces where philosophy, spirituality, and quiet wonder meet, consider subscribing. Join our community. We don't chase answers here. We follow the questions. Together. Thank you for staying until the end. You didn't just watch a video. You listened. You remembered. And maybe, so did your cat.